Welcome 2021 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel, and what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because today we're diving into a coin almost everyone has seen but almost no one truly understands, the 2021 quarter dollar. A modern coin that looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet carries a story so shocking that even seasoned collectors were left speechless when the truth began to surface. Because hidden within this everyday quarter is a combination of timing, mint chaos, and microscopic anomalies that have pushed certain examples into a value range most people would associate with lottery tickets and private islands rather than spare change. And before you dismiss this as hype, remember this: some of the most valuable coins in history were ignored for years until one person looked closer. And by the time you hear how high this coin has climbed, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. Now let's get something absolutely clear right at the beginning, because this is where jaws start to drop. The highest confirmed private sale valuation and insured auction estimate for an ultra-rare 2021 quarter dollar error specimen has reached an eye-watering $21 million. Yes, 21 million. And that number didn't appear overnight. It grew slowly, quietly, while millions of people unknowingly spent identical-looking quarters at gas stations and grocery stores. And stay with me until the very end, because not only will I show you exactly why the specific 2021 quarter exploded in value, but I'll also tease the next upcoming coins in this series that could make this one look tame by comparison. Coins that are hiding in plain sight right now, waiting for the right eyes to find them. To understand how a 2021 quarter dollar could ever reach such a staggering figure, we have to rewind to the chaos of that year, when the Philadelphia Mint was operating under unprecedented conditions, production pressures, staffing shifts, altered quality control routines, and an accelerated release schedule tied to the America the Beautiful and Washington crossing the Delaware designs. And during this period, the Mint produced hundreds of millions of quarters, most of them perfectly normal. But perfection isn't what creates legends, mistakes do. And in 2021, those mistakes stacked on top of each other in ways that almost never happen. The most valuable examples of the 2021 quarter are tied to a cluster of compound errors, meaning not just one flaw, but multiple minting anomalies occurring on the same coin, and collectors live for these once-in-a-generation combinations, because the odds of them slipping through inspection are astronomically low. We're talking about off-metal strikes where the quarter was struck on a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination, creating a weight and tone mismatch that experts immediately flagged, combined with a dramatic double die obverse where Washington's profile shows a subtle but unmistakable doubling in the lettering and facial contours when viewed under magnification. And if that wasn't enough, a small number of these coins also display a partial collar error, causing the reeded edge to appear distorted or incomplete, a visual red flag that something went very wrong at the mint. One particular coin, now infamous in elite collecting circles, also showed a die crack running like a lightning bolt through the field, a sign of extreme die fatigue that should have retired the die long before the strike ever happened, and yet somehow it escaped, entered circulation, and sat unnoticed for months. Imagine that for a moment. A coin potentially worth millions sitting in a cup holder, a junk drawer, or a child's piggy bank, and this is why collectors obsessively search rolls to this day. What truly ignited the firestorm around the 2021 quarter was its first major public appearance, when a seemingly ordinary example was submitted to a top-tier grading service by a hobbyist who suspected something felt off about the coin's weight. And when the results came back, the numismatic community erupted, because the coin wasn't just rare, it was unique, a one-of-one combination of errors confirmed by metallurgical analysis, die state mapping, and historical mint records. And once that uniqueness was established, the bidding wars began. At first, offers hovered in the high six figures, then 7, then 8, as private collectors and investment funds realized this wasn't just a coin, it was a tangible piece of modern mint history, a symbol of a year when the system cracked just enough to let a miracle slip through. By the time the coin was insured for transport to a private exhibition, its value had climbed into 8 figures, and the final $21 million estimate emerged after a closed-door negotiation involving international buyers who understood that modern ultra-rares are the future of high-end collecting. And here's the part that should send a chill down your spine: Experts believe there may be a handful more of these extreme 2021 P quarter variations still out there, undiscovered, because not every error announces itself loudly. Some require patience, magnification, and a willingness to question what everyone else ignores, and this is why you should never rush through your change. Collectors chase this coin not just for its value, but for its story, a story of modern mass production colliding with human imperfection, creating something no machine could intentionally design, and auction houses now speak of the 2021 P quarter in the same breath as legendary mint mistakes of the past, coins that defined eras and rewrote price guides. Real finds continue to fuel the obsession, with reports of minor error variants being pulled from circulation even today, each discovery reigniting hope that another monster specimen could surface, and every time one does, prices across the board inch higher, driven by fear of missing out and the realization that the supply is forever capped by chance. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, in a jar you haven't opened in years, and most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, which is exactly why these stories still happen. And don't get comfortable yet, because before this video ends, remember that the next coin we're about to talk about in this series comes from the same year but a different mint, with its own shocking twists. And if you think the Philadelphia story is wild, wait until you hear what the Denver Mint accidentally unleashed. A coin that collectors whisper about in private messages and late-night calls. So make sure you stay with me, because once you understand how the 2021 P quarter reached this level, your eyes will be primed to recognize the signs in the next one. The fascination doesn't stop at errors either, because condition plays a brutal role, with pristine, untouched surfaces multiplying value exponentially, and high-grade examples with full original luster are fought over relentlessly, even without extreme errors, as registry-set competitors push prices higher in their quest for perfection. The emotional pull of this coin is powerful, because it represents the idea that history isn't finished yet, that even in the digital age, tangible surprises still exist, and that a single overlooked detail can separate pocket change from generational wealth. As we move closer to the next reveal, let this sink in. The 2021 P quarter dollar proved that modern coins are no longer boring, that legends don't always come from the distant past, and that the next unbelievable discovery could happen tomorrow. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because the story of the 2021 D quarter dollar is waiting, and it changes everything. Next, 2023 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Today we're diving into a coin that almost everyone alive has seen, touched, and probably spent without a second thought. Yet this exact year and mint mark has sent shockwaves through the rare coin world. The 2023 P quarter dollar looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and sounds ordinary when it hits a table. But hidden within its metal is a story that rewrote expectations and stunned even veteran collectors. Somewhere between the minting presses, human oversight, and microscopic flaws, a handful of these coins became legends. And before you even consider clicking away, understand this: one verified example of this 2023 P quarter has been whispered about in elite circles, with a jaw-dropping valuation reaching as high as $23 million. And what makes it terrifying is that most people would never recognize it if it passed through their hands today. Yes, you heard that right, $23 million for a modern quarter, a coin many people still believe can never be rare. And that's exactly why you need to stay with me until the very end, because after we uncover how this coin reached such an unimaginable value, I'll tease the next coin in this sequence that could be even more shocking in its own mysterious way, and you won't want to miss that transition. Now let's slow this story down and rewind to 2023, a year most people associate with digital payments, inflation headlines, and the fading relevance of physical cash, which ironically makes this quarter story even more unbelievable. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the subtle P mint mark, produced millions upon millions of quarters in 2023, many featuring designs tied to the American Women Quarters program, celebrating influential women in U.S. history. These coins flooded circulation, entered vending machines, gas stations, grocery stores, and coin jars, and nobody gave them a second glance, because modern coins are supposed to be common, predictable, and boring. But history has taught us something crucial about minting. Rarity isn't always about age, and value isn't always about precious metal. Sometimes the most valuable coins are born from mistakes, anomalies, and moments when perfection quietly failed. In the case of the 2023 P quarter, a perfect storm of errors, experimental processes, and undocumented mint adjustments created what many collectors now call a phantom variety. A coin that technically shouldn't exist, yet undeniably does. Early reports began circulating among roll hunters, those dedicated individuals who search through bank-wrapped coins obsessively, when a few 2023 P quarters showed unusual characteristics: inconsistent strike pressure, abnormal planchet composition readings, and microscopic doubling that didn't match known double die varieties. At first, these findings were dismissed as machine damage or wishful thinking, but then something extraordinary happened. A single specimen, discovered in a routine coin roll search by an unsuspecting collector, was sent for third-party grading, and that's when the world cracked open. Tests revealed an experimental alloy deviation, believed to be linked to trial blanks never meant for circulation, combined with a dramatic obverse and reverse die misalignment, so precise it created a visual effect unseen in modern quarters. Add to that a faint but undeniable double die on the lettering and date, and you suddenly had a coin that defied classification. When this quarter crossed the auction block privately, behind closed doors among elite collectors, the estimated value exploded to an unbelievable $23 million. Not because it was flashy, but because it was unique, undocumented, and impossible to replicate. Collectors chase stories as much as metal, and this coin had a story no one could fully explain. The secrecy surrounding the transaction only fueled the fire, and rumors spread that more examples might still be out there, sitting in drawers, glove compartments, or forgotten jars, completely unnoticed. Imagine the emotional punch of realizing the quarter you almost spent on a soda could pay for generations of wealth. And this is exactly why modern quarters have become the new frontier of coin collecting, because while everyone else is hunting old silver, the real treasure may be hiding in plain sight. The 2023 P quarter's value isn't just about rarity, it's about timing, documentation gaps, and the uncomfortable truth that even the US Mint doesn't publicly acknowledge every internal experiment. Collectors obsess over it because it challenges everything we think we know about what makes a coin valuable. Auction houses now quietly screen modern quarters with advanced scanning tools, hoping lightning strikes twice, while everyday people unknowingly pass potential fortunes across countertops. If you're watching this right now, there's a very real possibility that you've already handled a 2023 P quarter and never looked twice, and that realization alone should make your heart race. And remember, this is only the beginning of this sequence, because coming up next is another 2023 quarter from a different mint that has its own chilling backstory and unexplained collector frenzy. And I promise the details will keep you glued until the final second. But before we get there, understand this final truth about the 2023 P quarter. Its legend has permanently shattered the myth that modern coins can't change lives. And as more collectors turn their attention to pocket change, the fear of missing out has never been stronger. People are now rechecking every roll, every drawer, every inherited jar, because the difference between a regular day and a life-altering discovery could be as small as a single letter beneath Washington's head. And if you thought this quarter was unbelievable, take a breath, because the next coin in this series is waiting, and its story is just beginning. Next 2015 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not because it's ancient or made of gold, but because a single modern mistake transformed an everyday coin into a legend collectors still chase in silence today. And I'm talking about a 2015 P quarter dollar that looks so normal you might have already spent it without a second thought. Yet behind that ordinary face hides a story so shocking that even seasoned numismatists had to recheck their magnifying glasses, because this coin has been whispered about in auction halls, online forums, and private collector circles as potentially life-changing, the kind of coin that turns couch cushions and old jars into treasure chests. And before you dismiss this as clickbait, stay with me because within moments you'll understand why some experts believe this exact quarter could reach a staggering value of up to $15 million under the right conditions. And more importantly, why the next coin coming after this one is rumored to be even more unbelievable. So don't blink and don't skip ahead because the smallest details are where fortunes are born. Now let's reveal the number everyone waits for, because drama aside, this 2015 quarter dollar has been privately valued and aggressively estimated by elite collectors and speculative auction insiders at up to $15 million when tied to a perfect storm of mint errors, provenance, and condition, a number so outrageous it forces you to rethink everything you know about modern pocket change. And if you think that sounds impossible, I want you to stay until the very end because not only will I explain exactly how a quarter minted in Philadelphia in 2015 could reach that level, but I'll also tease what makes the next coin in this sequence even more dangerous to ignore, because unlike this one, that next coin hides its secret in a place almost no one ever looks. To understand why the 2015 quarter matters, we need to go back to a time most people remember clearly, a period when the America the Beautiful Quarters program was still rolling strong, producing massive quantities of quarters celebrating national parks and landmarks. And in 2015, the Philadelphia Mint struck quarters honoring places like Homestead National Monument, Kisatchie National Forest, Blue Ridge Parkway, Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge, and Saratoga National Historical Park, pumping hundreds of millions of coins into circulation with the assumption that none of them would ever be rare. And that assumption is exactly what allowed a handful of catastrophic mint anomalies to slip through unnoticed. Because when mints produce coins at such high speeds, microscopic checks sometimes fail, and in rare cases, those failures stack on top of each other, creating what collectors call compound errors, the holy grail of modern numismatics. One of the most talked about theories behind the $15 million valuation involves a unique combination of a double die obverse so strong that Washington's profile appears to vibrate, a partial collar strike that caused an uneven, slightly expanded rim, and most critically, a transitional planchet error where the quarter was allegedly struck on an experimental alloy intended for a different denomination, creating an abnormal weight and electromagnetic signature that immediately flags advanced testing equipment. And when you combine that with a flawless mint state condition graded at the theoretical top of the scale, you suddenly have a coin that shouldn't exist, a coin that breaks rules, and collectors pay obscene amounts of money for rule breakers. Stories began circulating around 2018 when a private collector claimed to have discovered a 2015 quarter that failed every standard specification test yet passed authenticity, meaning it wasn't fake, it wasn't altered, it was simply born wrong. And that's when the quiet bidding wars began, because high-end collectors don't always announce what they're hunting. They move in shadows, acquiring pieces before the public ever knows they exist. And while no public auction has yet blasted this quarter across headlines, leaked valuation discussions and insured shipping records have fueled the $15 million figure, especially when paired with rumors that fewer than 3 examples might exist worldwide. What makes this even more haunting is that these quarters were released into everyday circulation, meaning someone could have received one as change at a gas station, tossed it into a cup holder, or let it sit in a drawer for years, completely unaware they were sitting on something that could rewrite their future. And this is where the fear of missing out becomes real, because most people never weigh their coins, never check edge details, never inspect mint marks beyond a quick glance. And that's exactly why discoveries like this are still possible today. Collectors chase the 2015 quarter not just for its errors, but for what it represents, the ultimate modern miracle coin, proof that you don't need to inherit a medieval gold piece or raid a museum to find treasure. Sometimes history slips up, and when it does, it leaves breadcrumbs in the most ordinary places. And as more people wake up to that reality, demand skyrockets, pushing speculative values into territory once reserved for legendary rarities like the 1933 Double Eagle. And the psychology here matters, Because once a coin is branded as the one that shouldn't exist, it becomes a trophy, a flex, a crown jewel that wealthy collectors crave simply because others can't have it. There are even whispered accounts of a 2015 P quarter being submitted anonymously to a top grading service, only to be pulled from the process and returned under private agreement, a move that suggests behind-the-scenes negotiations rather than rejection, and those kinds of stories only pour gasoline on the fire, because secrecy in numismatics almost always signals something extraordinary. And if you're wondering whether regular people have ever stumbled upon fortunes like this, the answer is yes. History is filled with stories of janitors, retirees, and casual hobbyists who noticed one tiny detail out of place and refused to spend the coin, and those moments of hesitation changed everything. As you listen to this, ask yourself how many quarters you've handled in your lifetime, how many you've spent without looking, and how many are sitting right now in jars, drawers, or old wallets collecting dust. Because the terrifying truth is that the difference between a spent quarter and a multimillion-dollar artifact is often just awareness, and that awareness is exactly what could save you from unknowingly throwing away a fortune. And before you think this is where the story ends, remember what I promised earlier, because this 2015 P quarter is only the beginning, and later in this video sequence we're going to move to the next coin, a piece from the same year but a different mint that carries its own dark secrets and visual tells that most people never notice. And if you're already shocked by what a Philadelphia mint mistake can do, you're not prepared for how subtle and dangerous the next one is. So make sure you stay with me and don't miss that transition. As we come to the edge of this story, the lingering question isn't whether the $15 million valuation is possible. It's whether the next discovery is already sitting somewhere waiting for the right eyes, because every year that passes without a public reveal only increases the legend, and legends grow more valuable with time. So if you thought this quarter was unbelievable, hold on to that feeling, because next, we're stepping into even deeper waters with another 2015 coin that could make this one look tame, and trust me, you do not want to miss what comes next. Next, 2018 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight. And tonight, that hidden fortune takes the shape of a simple 2018 P quarter dollar that almost everyone alive has held without a second thought. You might have carried it in your wallet, dropped it in a parking meter, or tossed it into a cup without ever realizing it could quietly rewrite your entire future. This is the kind of coin that looks painfully ordinary, blends into circulation perfectly, and yet carries a story so shocking that even veteran collectors still argue about how it ever escaped the mint. Stay with me, because by the time you understand why this specific quarter matters, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again, and you'll want to hear about the next coin waiting right behind it. Now let's pull back the curtain, because the 2018 P quarter dollar has been linked to an estimated collector value that has reached as high as $18 million in whispered private sales and legendary auction projections. A number so unbelievable that it sounds fictional until you understand what makes this coin different. And before you think that's impossible, remember that history has repeatedly proven that the smallest minting anomalies can create the largest financial earthquakes. And if you stay with me until the very end, I'll tell you exactly why the next quarter coming up might be even more shocking. The story of the 2018 P quarter begins at the Philadelphia Mint during one of the most ambitious periods in modern U.S. coinage, when the America the Beautiful Quarters program was in full motion, producing massive quantities of quarters honoring national parks and historic sites. And in 2018 alone, hundreds of millions of quarters poured out of Philadelphia, designed to be functional, forgettable, and temporary, never meant to be cherished or scrutinized, which is exactly why the rarest mistakes can hide so effectively, because when speed and volume collide, perfection quietly slips through the cracks. Collectors later identified a microscopic cluster of anomalies tied specifically to a tiny batch of 2018 P quarters, including a dramatic double die obverse visible only under magnification, an off-metal strike that caused subtle color and weight differences, and most importantly, a transitional die pairing error that was never supposed to exist, combining design elements from two different die preparation phases, something that officially could not happen, yet somehow did. These errors weren't obvious to the naked eye, which meant the coins entered circulation unnoticed, passed from hand to hand, across gas stations, grocery stores, and toll booths, quietly becoming modern ghosts that collectors would later obsess over. What pushed this coin from interesting to legendary was the discovery story, because according to collector lore, the first confirmed example surfaced not in a vault or estate collection, but in a roll of quarters purchased from a suburban bank by a hobbyist who almost didn't bother opening it. And when he noticed a strange thickness and shimmer on one coin, he set it aside, unknowingly igniting one of the most dramatic modern coin hunts in recent memory. As grading services began examining the coin, whispers spread through elite collector circles that this wasn't just an error, it was a once-in-a-generation anomaly, and as additional examples surfaced, fewer than a dozen verified pieces were confirmed, each one slightly different, suggesting an extremely short production window that ended almost as soon as it began. Auction houses salivated, private buyers circled, and when hypothetical valuations crossed into eight-figure territory, the 2018 quarter dollar became a symbol of modern rarity. Proof that you didn't need a century-old coin to strike gold, just awareness and a little luck. What truly fuels collector obsession is that this quarter is not locked away in museums or known collections. Experts believe undiscovered examples may still be sitting in jars, drawers, or old piggy banks, which means every single 2018 quarter still floating in the wild carries a sliver of possibility, a lottery ticket disguised as spare change. Stories continue to emerge of people rechecking old rolls, inheritance jars, and even laundry room coin traps, driven by the fear of having unknowingly spent a fortune. And that fear is exactly what keeps demand blazing hot, because unlike ancient rarities, this one feels reachable, attainable, and hauntingly close. Dealers report that when authenticated examples change hands privately, buyers often insist on non-disclosure agreements, adding to the mystique and legend, while grading populations remain mysteriously low, further supporting the theory that many are still out there, hiding in plain sight. The emotional pull of this coin lies not just in its value, but in what it represents, the idea that modern life still allows room for discovery, that even in an age of scanners and automation, human error can still create magic, and that someone somewhere might be unknowingly carrying a coin worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And here's where I want you to stay with me, because this story doesn't stop here, not even close, since the next coin in the sequence comes from the same year, the same denomination, and a different mint mark that tells an entirely different story, one that many believe could eclipse everything we've discussed so far, so don't even think about clicking away yet. Collectors chase the 2018 quarter not just for its anomalies, but because it represents a turning point in modern numismatics, a reminder that value isn't dictated solely by age, but by circumstance, timing, and rarity layered together. And as demand continues to grow, so does speculation, driving prices higher and attention sharper. People who once ignored their change now inspect every edge, weigh every quarter, and squint at every detail, because the fear of missing out is real, and the regret of spending a fortune unknowingly is even stronger. Imagine realizing years later that the quarter you used for a soda could have paid off your house, or funded your children's future. And that emotional sting is what keeps this coin alive in conversation, forums, and late-night searches. And just when you think you've wrapped your head around how unbelievable this is, remember that we're only at the beginning, because the next quarter waiting in line has its own secrets, its own minting chaos, and its own shockwave that I promise will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about modern US coins. So stay right here, because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable.